This conference will now be recorded.
We'll get started here in a minute. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Engineering and Operations Committee meeting and a special meeting of the Board of Directors of the West Basin Municipal Water District. And it is about 5 minutes after 4 p.m. on Wednesday, January 12th. So Happy New Year to everybody. And we're looking forward to a productive and challenging 2022. Hopefully everybody had a great holiday season. And if you're like me, it's seems like that was ages ago. And it just happened to be two short weeks. With that, I'd like to call this meeting to order. And to get started, we'll have a determination of a quorum. So, Mr. General Manager, could you go over that, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll begin with the members of the committee, and then I'll do the other board members as well. President Harold Williams. Here. And Chairman Desi Alvarez.
Here.
Also, we have alternate Scott Houston.
Here.
Director Don Deere.
Here.
And Director Gloria Gray.
Here.
So we have all 5 board members present, and we do have a quorum.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
Chairman Alvarez, we have not received any requests for public comment. I do notice that we have at least 1 or 2 members of the public here today with us. So if anybody would like to make a comment under this section of the agenda, please let us know now. And seeing none.
Seeing none, we'll move on. How about any presentations for today?
Chairman Alvarez, we have no presentations for today.
Okay, so we'll move on to the action calendar. And today on the action calendar, we'll have a discussion of the Donald L. Deere headquarters facility and renovation project. So with that, Mr. General Manager, would you make your presentation?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. You might recall back in August, this committee heard an item related to the Donald L. Deere headquarters building. At that time, we discussed potential options for renovations and the future of this building. It was the direction from this committee and ultimately from the board of directors to go out and seek an appraisal of the Donald L. Deere building headquarters as is. West Basin staff received at least 1 response to our request for proposals. We did negotiate that proposal down. Our staff did an excellent job of cutting that nearly in half. And today we have the results of that appraisal. And for this presentation, we do have Wendell Johnson.
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. I'm here this afternoon to provide you an update on the DLD building headquarters building renovation project. Please turn to page 69 in your packet, item number 5AB. Next slide, please. Just a quick overview of this timeline. We have been evaluating the building since June of 2017. Key milestones: we completed the PDR in September of 2017. We made a presentation of the PDR to the board in October of 2017, and we completed a comparative market analysis of the building in June of 2018, which valued the building at approximately $7.2 million. In July of 2018, we completed an analysis of the DLD building, and in November of 2018, we presented the structural analysis results to the senior staff. Next slide, please. In July of 2019, we updated the comparative market analysis or value of the building, and we provided an E&O update in October of 2019. And then I grabbed the handles of the project, and in October of 2021, we did an E&O update, which EJ, General Manager, talked about a few seconds ago. We were able to go out for a competitive market and get an appraisal and on board an appraiser. And in December of last year, the appraisal was completed, and I'm here today to provide you with an update on the findings of the appraisal. Next slide, please. Just a little building history, background of the history of the building. It was built between 1981 and 1982. Original occupant was the Food Employers Council. West Basin and Central Basin occupied the building from 1999 to 2006. And in 1991, some renovations were made to the building, and it became West Basin's headquarters in 2006. It was purchased from Central Basin for $2.4 million. Between the years 2011 and 2019, approximately $2.3 million worth of renovations were done to the building. This included upgrading of the common public space. It was a replacement of the roof system and some interior renovations of the building. Next slide, please. Okay. We have a wealth of information that this report has been developed from. We took a look at the as-built drawings from the original building of the building. There was a structural evaluation done in 2009. Headquarters roof was repaired 2013. And then we did a office assessment 2017, as well as a structural evaluation in 2018. We looked at the elevators in 2018, and recently we also looked at the elevators again. And this final piece of this report is the appraisal report that was conducted in December of 2021. Next slide, please. Some of the key findings of the appraisal. The market building value is $7.2 million. Okay. If you look at page 11 in your packet, that's your appraisal. This is where the appraisal starts the executive summary of it. The appraisal also valued the land because the board asked about what would be the value of the site without the building. It valued the land between $3 million and just shy of $4 million, or $70 to $90 per square foot. The economic life remaining in the building is 35 years. The 35-year economic life is essentially, if you were to lease out the building as is, how long of a life would the building be economically viable? During that lifetime, of course, there would be repairs made to the buildings and probably some upgrades in that. But the building itself has an appearance of a building that is about 20 years old, and that's partially because, again, West Basin, the district, has put some investments into the building over the years that the district has occupied the building. The fair market lease value for the building is of approximately $60,000 a month, or $720,000 per year. A comparable average lease space within West Basin's service area is $3.21 per square foot asking, or approximately $1.1 million per year. And this is based on 26,000 square feet, which is approximately the amount of space that was developed doing the needs analysis of 2017 and 2018. Additional, next page, please.
Should be. Wendell, I just wanted to clarify that on the slide prior, and of course on page 6 that Wendell referenced, the appraisal came in at 7.1. I think he mentioned 7.2. I just wanted to clarify. Small potatoes when we talk about a $7 million building, but I want to make sure that we have the numbers correct.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, next slide, please. And again, mentioning the needs of, this was additional information requested that was outside of the appraisal. The needs assessment came in at 26,000 square foot. The equity is essentially the appraised value, the $7.1 million, minus the book value, which is approximately $3.4 million, or that's the equity that's in the building. And we also got an estimate for the cost of demolition of the building, and that would be $360,000. Next slide, please. When we reported back in August, these are the numbers that we reported, and so we want to bring these numbers back to you, back to you. Okay, and this is what is estimated would cost to correct the structural deficiencies, to renovate the space of the building, accessibility and all the office areas, replacement of the mechanical systems, which includes essentially the heating, ventilation, plumbing, and an upgrade to your electrical systems in the building. The option here is the $1.5 million. We're taking a look at sustainability or making it a green building, which would also include the possibility on-site generation of solar electricity. The estimate for the cost of architectural and engineering services at the time was $1.2 million and about 8% for permits. And so we reported last time about $14.5 million to renovate the building based on 33,000 square foot. And this is also a $200 per square foot. The appraiser felt that that price was a little high, that you could probably be more in the $70 to $110 per square foot, given his experience with commercial property of this type. Next slide, please. We're looking at the building largely because there's a lot of near-term building needs. Okay, we need to upgrade the cooling and the fire suppression in the IT room. We have a cost estimate that staff is reviewing now that says that to upgrade the elevators to make them compliant and to upgrade them was about $200,000 for both elevators. In addition, our boilers and plumbing and HVAC system is also given quite a bit of trouble, or there's been quite a bit of repairs necessary over this last couple of years. Okay, and the expectation is that the boilers are going to need to be replaced at a cost of about $40,000, as well as some heating and ventilation replacements of the coils on the rooftop package unit that's up there. Next slide, please. So in the appraisal, there are estimated average costs within the appraisals throughout the document. Okay, and it provided a basis for determining or coming up with an estimate. Previously, I kept in here what we talked about previously was a 33,000 square foot building, about a $14.5 million cost and renovation. The actual measured cost of the size of this building is really 28,000 square foot, 28,543 square foot, and the needs of the organization is again about 2,400 square feet less than that, or 2,600 square feet. And so looking at those numbers, our new most probable cost for renovation of the building is about $12.5 million. To purchase or to build a new building, taking the figures from the appraisal of a new building for about 26,000 square feet would cost about $26 million. And that's based on a building costs of about $12.5 million and a land lease over a 20-year period of about $10 million in addition to that. The average lease, this information is included in the appraisal. The average lease in our service area is about $3.21 per square foot to an average lease of $4.21 in other areas when you talk about El Segundo area. And so taking those numbers, those square footage, average square footage costs for a lease and multiplying by 26,000 square feet, that's how we came up with the range of $20 million to $26 million for a lease for over 20 years. Next slide, please. So as part of our recommendation, and when we talk about the renovation of the building, I want to again refresh the board's memory on what has been put before them. Here on the next 3 pages are preliminary floor layouts from the study of 2017, which established a needs of about 2,600 square feet. So next slide, please, is the second floor. One thing to note, if we could back up one slide, one thing to note on, if we could back up one slide. On the first floor layout, some of the largest costs is removing the boardroom from the third floor and actually placing the boardroom on the first floor, so you wouldn't have as many accessibility issues in the building, as well as you would be code compliant for this type of construction and this type of occupancy. And so that's one of the costs that are involved in there. Next slide, please. This is just standard office layout. Next slide, please. And this is the third floor. Next slide, please. So at this time, would welcome any questions that the board may have. And then after the questions, I can read the recommendation.
Okay, thank you, Wendell. President Williams, start with you. Do you have any questions or comments? Comments or questions?
Just a comment or question. Do you ever consider that?
President Williams, if you could turn on your microphone.
Sorry about that. We ever consider that this building is not physically located in our service area? Do we consider that? I believe it's located in the Central Basin service area.
My understanding is that, and this is from the basic maps that I've seen, and also my conversations with the Central Basin, and a little bit of maybe historic perspective, is that the boundary line for Central Basin actually runs, quote unquote, through the building. And it was done that West Basin gave a portion of their service area to Central Basin for the purpose of being able to host these meetings in both West Basin and Central Basin. That's my understanding.
May I say something? This is Don. May I say something? Can you hear me?
Dr. Deere.
Yeah, that's correct. It was part of this property was put out of the building itself. A piece of the property was put in Central Basin so they could meet with us. But after they left, the plan was to reorganize the boundary lines, and we need to do that. LAFCO will easily move on that once we make the appropriate attempt to bring back into West Basin the area we ceded to Central. It's just no longer necessary for them to have that. So that's another issue, but I'll have to see us move on that too.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments?
That's it, yeah.
Director Deers, since you have a little bit of history,
Hello.
share some comments with us or questions that you have on this item?
That was the only comment I have at this time.
I have some questions, Director Gray, if I may.
Great, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Given the fact of what Don and TJ said, is there an issue with the fact that the property is halfway? I think that's what I heard in Central Basin area, that does not give any claim to Central Basin for the building, correct?
That is correct. We settled the issue of the ownership of the building with Central Basin during the split.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, how about you, Director Houston? Do you have any questions or comments?
Sure, I do, Mr. Chair. A few things. So first and foremost, honestly, it's a bit of a new revelation to me because I'd heard a little bit about it wasn't really in our service area or it's on the cusp. But if it actually isn't in the service area, and that's been since 2006, that's pretty darn amazing that we never dealt with that in all these many years. So I guess that would be an issue that we need to resolve. So I would, no matter what we do, we got to figure that out. But a couple things, if I go back really quick here to slide number 10, which showed the estimated costs.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what were you referring to?
Slide number 10.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I mean, just a few things. Look, even in this new analysis, this building is around supposedly $7.1 million. These numbers here show renovations of double, at least the old renovation number was 14.5 million. Even this updated to a smaller square footage that you'd be, I guess, renovating or utilizing is 12.5 million. So it's over 5 million more than the building is even worth, apparently, in this market. Number one, that's really concerning to me. And I do have a question on this. You kind of alluded to it, I think, in here, but I'm confused, is how much space do we actually need for our West Basin staff versus what this building offers? So can that question be answered for us, please?
I think if I understood correctly, and staff can correct me, but I want to just say it so I can clear my own understanding, is that their assessment of the need that we have is 26,000 square feet. Did I understand that correctly?
That's correct.
So the needs assessment that was completed in 2017 says that we need about 26,000 square feet. And I assume that that is consistent with the layout that was presented for the 3 floors, inclusive of the boardroom on the first floor.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for that. So even those drawings referred to about 26,000 square feet. The other thing is this building was built, 81, 82, so basically it's 40 years old. And you presented the line items in here, but it doesn't look like a lot of things over time have been done to the building, or am I wrong? I mean, you've done some renovations, but structurally and things like that. I mean, has the building been kept up well over the 40 years?
Yeah. If you, within inside the appraiser's report, the condition of the building is considered average plus.
And one other question. If somebody else came in and bought this building, what would they likely do with it?
If the building was sold as is, the indications from the appraisal report is that they would lease the building out for its current use. Although the lot itself is zoned industrial, light commercial, there's other options that the building could be used for, but we only evaluate the building in the appraisal for an office building, the like type of use, sold as is, like type of use.
Oh, okay. And I do understand that, But also, if someone bought it, they might just tear it down, they may gut it, they may use it for something completely different than office space, correct?
They may do that, but the appraisal report indicated that the economic life of the building was, and its current use was an additional 35 years.
Okay, but even then, they would probably have to do a number of upgrades, just like we're looking at potentially too, at least on some real basic things, right?
Right, and that would be depending on the organization. The high ticket items of the seismic upgrade is an option for a building owner. It's voluntary, and it's not strictly required by code. The code improvements would be depending on the type of layout or the use of the building, and accessibility to the offices would dictate that. And the report further said it would be unlikely if you did any improvements, if the agency did any improvements to the building at this particular time, you wouldn't receive any additional revenue from the sale of the building.
Okay, no, that's a very good point, Wendell. Thank you for that. My last thing, Mr. Chair, is, I remember when those plans were presented back in 2017 or so, and if I'm not mistaken, I believe that was before we knew all of the issues that were affecting the building. I think a lot of those drawings were made in preparation that could be a project to prepare the building for its more current use at the time for staff. But if I'm not mistaken, I think we got into the weeds and found out the building had all these other challenges we weren't aware of. And so, of course, everybody put the brakes on that. And we really focused on Ed C. Little renovations at that time. But all that being said, they were, they're beautiful drawings. It was a very ambitious looking type of plan. But I also think that based on what we really need for staff, we could probably look at a new assessment on that, as well as the fact we just don't quite need as much space. And from everything I see, this building just needs so much work versus what the district's actual needs are, let alone the value of it, that I do not see moving forward with any renovation on this building. I think that we should definitely look at securing office space somewhere else and potentially sell this building. But I, of course, defer to my colleagues on those next steps. But that's my initial thinking, especially based on the mathematics that's presented to us. So thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, staff.
Any comments? I would, if I had to make comments right now, I'd probably say ditto.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have a few comments. I tend to agree with a lot of the statements you've made, Director Houston. In looking at the overall layout and so on, and the needs of 26,000 square feet, it occurs to me that some of that is driven by just the fact that we were filling out space in the existing footprint of the building. And there, if you look at the layouts of the floor plans, there seems to be a lot of dead space and more space than would be required. I also noticed that everybody has individual offices, and I think in the last 4 or 5 years, there's been a tremendous movement in the office planning and design to do away with that. And if you're designing an office today and completely from scratch, this type of layout would not be the type of layout that would be used. So I have a concern that we really need 26,000 square feet. I think that if we looked at this in detail, that the recommendations that were made then were in the background. I'm sure it's not written in the report that way, but it was in the background. They filled up the space, and even when you look at it today, it just seems excessive, and that there's a lot of dead space within the floors. that really are not needed. Uh, so on that basis, I think that we can do with significantly smaller space. And if you take out, one of the things I was thinking of, just take out the first floor, because that's just all space for the boardroom, and we can do a bifurcated type, at least for exploring, because I think we ought to explore some options here. A bifurcated approach would be take advantage of the investment that's already been made at the Ed C. Little building, and that would be where the board meetings would be held, since that space is already built out, etc. And we might want to make some minor changes to it there, but uh, a significant cost range, although it would cost us something. I'm not quite sure we do need to make any. And then we just look at the space that really is needed to accommodate the staff. We don't need as many, for example, conference rooms as shown there in the existing layout, which was just filling space in the building that we have. So I think that we ought to revisit this and pursue other options before we continue to invest in this building. So that one of the things we can do is the relocation of the Donald L. Deere corporate, whatever we want to call our building or our headquarters, the Donald Deere headquarters, to a different location from where we are today. And look at the benefits and or the cost of, not the benefits, but the cost of doing those options, so that we have something else to compare it to. I did read through the appraisal completely, and it's a very good appraisal. And fundamentally, the building's worth about its market value is worth about $7.1 million. And that's as is, and as staff mentioned in response to one of the questions, if you make any investments to the building, you will not recuperate that in the sale. Whoever purchases the building, if you read the appraisal, we'll probably make some minor modifications to the building just to make it a little more convenient for leasing it out, but lease it out as office space on as is, and they will just then recover their investment that way. And it looks like pretty much that the market approach came back either way that they did the appraisal to that 7.1 value. At the end of the day, as it's stated in there, it's still a market-driven transaction, and so the final cost or the final price of the building will be whatever would be offered. So we won't know until we actually put it on the market what that value would be. But I'm fairly comfortable with the appraisal and moving forward with the understanding that we may get in the ballpark of $7.1 million for the value of the building, if that's the final decision that's made. And that we relocate then the operation to a separate location. So I would like to explore that a little bit further and have those options come back to us. So in terms of a recommendation, my recommendation, President Williams, I don't know what you would like to do, but I would say that we ought to pursue looking at a bifurcated approach, as well as an approach that includes a new building that incorporates both the office space needs as well as the boardroom needs. So those two options and what can be done there.
So the bottom line is, though, we're not looking at doing anything to stay here.
That would be my recommendation, is that we at least explore the additional options, and then we may come back to that, but see where we are.
Well, I can't, I would hope that we don't come back here.
Okay,
So, I mean, we should be looking at
all right.
vacating these premises and for our activity as a board, for a board meeting, for staff. But of course, the staff, housing of the staff doesn't necessarily have to be in this location that we have our board meeting, right? So, yes, I would concur with exploring anything other than option for item B here on.
Okay.
Okay,
So let's then recommend that we pursue relocation options.
so that would be item B here on item A.
Item A, in the
Okay,
recommendation.
I would concur with that.
Well, thank you for that input from the committee and board. I do, in my notes, I've noted the selection of option A. I did want to ask for some clarification, because as we pursue option A, you mentioned a bifurcated strategy of looking at office space needs. And I think you're correct when you look at the design that we had contemplated back in 2017 was based primarily on our needs at that time and where we thought staff numbers would be, but also working with the existing infrastructure in the space that we had. So I do think that is a valid point. But I want to make sure I understand, when you talk about a bifurcated strategy, are you looking at office space specifically and then the board potential as one, or are you looking at the board meetings being at the ECL and then trying to find an alternative location solely for staff housing?
I think that is that you understood what I meant.
Okay.
So what one is, we just say that we're going to relocate the board meetings to the space that's already been built out at the EDC Little, and that we find an alternate location for the office space. And the second option would be, we may find something where we can incorporate both the board meeting room as well as the office space in one location.
Well, again, thank you very much for the direction. I think staff has clear direction. What we'll begin to do is bring this back as progress gets made with regular updates as we pursue relocation options. And we'll be bringing that back, not just to talk about our process and our strategy as far as staff analyzing this and taking this to the next level, but obviously if and when we need consultants specifically related to real estate services, we'll be discussing that with you as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, it's Houston.
Comments?
Yeah, it's Director Houston.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to come on the back end of this because I fully agree with what direction you've given the staff. I think when you do come back with that staff, I think if you can give us, a real thorough understanding of based on our staff size and the way we run our operations, what is the real amount of space we need? That's what I'd like to know. So when you looked at any option for office space, whether it's more of an open format or what have you, but how many conference rooms are not people? How much of the space would you need that has private offices versus open space? But let's have a really realistic number before us based on our small staff size and the efficiency with which they work. So we do know what the real needs are. I think that'd be number one for me. Number two is, the building is in a desirable location on that corner right off the freeway. So it's a very desirable location. I don't really think it meets our needs at this point, let alone all the issues it has that we can't justify spending on it. So I would say we would definitely look at that probably as an as is. And then, the other thing is, it's not overly complicated to utilize the space at EDC Little for at least board meetings or certain meetings, and we've done this before. But there are multiple organizations even around us that do have, they kind of do it in that nature. So for example, when I've been at El Camino College, the Board of Trustees meets in a very large room, just like our boardroom, set up with tables and mics and things like that. So, these definitely can accommodate. I don't think it's anything that we should be scared of looking at. And also, for example, City of West Hollywood, the staff and City Hall is in one building on one side of town, and then their meeting space, their council chamber is actually in the library on the other side of town. Now, of course, it was designed for that purpose, but again, it's a separate building literally across the community from the other building that accommodates the public meeting. So we have precedent on this, but I agree with my colleagues that let's come back with some information before we move forward to any decision making. And I would ask that we do this as quick as possible, not to belabor it, so we can make decisions faster than slower, as well as, the market conditions might very well, at least on some levels, be in our favor. That's it. Thank you, Director Alvarez, Mr. Chair.
All right, you're very welcome. Okay, so with that, we will move on to the information calendar. And on the information calendar, I'm going to postpone completion of the recycled water master plan discussion and bring that back at a different time. And then we
Director Alvarez, hello.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I have a question. Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Before we move on. Thank you. I had to get off the phone for a few minutes, but did we hear the staff recommendation on this item at all? Or was there one? I heard a lot of dialogue from the board members, but did the staff have any recommendation on this item?
So staff's recommendation was that the board consider the two options in evaluating the appraisal as well as the potential costs. We are handling this item with the best information that we have available to us. Some of the studies and some of the analysis that was conducted was from back in 2017 as well as 2018, as was shown in the PowerPoint presentation. When it comes to real estate and ownership of a facility, it really goes down to the eye of the beholder what the directors and the agency sees as the best fit for its need. I can see a case for any direction as far as renovating this building. Obviously, there's significant costs, and of course, you have the value of the building at $7.1 million. The direction that we've been given is to go look for alternative sites. Of course, the board could pivot and change their mind at that point. But ultimately, this does come down to a policy decision of where the board wants to make that investment.
Right. Okay. All right. I just wanted to hear staff comments on it. Thank you.
Okay, so we will, as I was saying, move on to the information calendar. And then the first item we're going to consider is an effluent from the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant as a potential supply source for West Basin's recycled water program. And this is to, you can't hear me?
Yeah, you're kind of muffled.
All right, I'm going to just take off my mask. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay. And I apologize, I'll put my mask back on in a minute. We are at least 6 feet apart here. So the next item is a discussion of using effluent from the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant as a potential supply source for West Basin Recycled Water Program. And this will begin with a discussion, I think, of some studies that go back almost 20 years ago. So with that, Mr. General Manager, if you could go ahead and discuss this item.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Alvarez. And as you mentioned, this is a summary of two specific reports to study the effluent from the Joint Water Pollution Control Plant as a potential supply source for West Basin's Recycled Water Program. These reports were conducted here at West Basin Municipal Water District in partnership with other agencies. And it's really important to note that some of these documents were created prior to several of our staff members joining West Basin Municipal Water District. So I wanted to compliment and highlight that fact because our engineering team has done an excellent job of not just reviewing those reports, but also working with industry professionals that were previously here at West Basin Municipal Water District, but really exploring the scope of those studies and really getting into the weeds as far as understanding what we were trying to accomplish and what the summaries and findings were. And for this presentation, we do have Iris Wong. She is one of our newest staff members, so this was obviously a challenge, but she did an excellent job as far as summarizing it. And she is here to present this item, and she is our newest senior engineer. So Iris, go ahead and take it away.
Welcome, Iris.
Thank you, EJ, for your introduction. Good evening, Chairman, members of committee and the board. I'm here today to present an overview of using the effluent from Joint Water Pollution Control Plan as a potential water supply for West Basin. I will, in my following presentation, to refer the Joint Water Pollution Control Plan as the Joint Water Plan. Next slide, please. As you know, Hyperion has been the only water supply for West Basin for many years. Hyperion is operated by the City of Los Angeles. It treats about 375 mgd on average wastewater, although it has a higher treatment capacity for the wet weather. On the other hand, as you can see in this map, Joint Water Plant is located in the city of Carson. It treats about 300 mgd wastewater, has 400 mgd treatment capacity. Joint Water Plant receives a higher percentage of from industry customers. Therefore, the total dissolved solids concentration of Joint Water Plant's effluent is higher. We're going to mention that in the later slide more. Compared with spring water from Hyperion, using the effluent from Joint Water Plant potentially could reduce the amount of pipeline constructions crossing the South Bay cities, also could improve the system reliability and bring more system redundancy. Next slide, please. West Basin did studies previously on Joint Water Plant as a potential water supply. Next slide, please. The first study we did was a joint pilot plant test completed in 2000. This test went on for about 18 months, and we collected data needed to develop the design criteria for full-scale design and data needed for develop the operation parameters. However, the study was done 20 years ago. Since then, the water quality of Joint Water Plant second has been changed. The type of technology used back then was microfiltration versus osmosis. As you know, the technology have been improved significantly since then. So it's not recommended to use the conclusion from the study directly on the future project implementation. However, we did learn, and it was confirmed that total dissolved solid concentration of the Joint Water Plant second effluent was high. Next slide, please. So between 2009 and 2010, West Basin prepared the capital implementation master plan. We discussed the 3 water supply options for projected about 28 mgd recycled water demand for the customers located in the city of Carson. Option 1 was to get the entire 28 mgd water supply Hyperion only. Option 2 was to get about 15 mgd from Joint Water Plant and 13 mgd from Hyperion. The option 3 was to maximize the water supply 28 mgd from Joint Water Plant. Next slide, please. So compare all the options. Option 1 has the highest capital cost. It would have the most extensive pump station upgrades and need to construct the largest pipelines to bring water from Hyperion to the city of Carson, and also need significant expansion at Edward C. Little. All 3 options would need to acquire additional land to place the treatment facilities. The other 2 options, option 2 and option 3, would need to construct a brand new treatment facility. Somewhere was proposed in the city of Carson. Next slide, please. So the cost analysis indicated that option 1 would have the highest capital cost, comparing with option 3 having the lowest capital cost. Next slide, please. Then between 2009 and 2010, West Basin prepared the feasibility study for Carson Regional Water Recycling Plant expansion project. We investigated, as part of scope, the possibility of constructing a brand new recycled water facility at Joint Water Plant to supply about 7.88 mgd boiler feed water and about 6.88 cooling water to the Marathon refinery. The study was divided into 3 phases. The last phase, however, a planned pilot test was not conducted. Most likely was because the transfer owner at that time made it difficult to reach agreement on the project funding. Next slide, please.
Excuse me, before you go to the next slide, can you expand a little bit more on that phase 3? What? Because I didn't quite comprehend it, everything behind that.
Okay, so phase 3, there was a pilot test planned for phase 3. However, the pilot test was not performed. So I called the previous West Basin's senior staff who worked on this project based on the information given that possibly because of back in 2010, the Marathon refinery at that time was owned by BP. It was sold to different owners. So because of the change of owner, it has been hard to make agreement on the project pricing, budgeting, and reach agreement on the project funding. So the pilot test was not conducted. So moving forward, I'm going to talk about detail the phase 1, phase 3 in my latest slide. Next slide, please. So phase 1 feasibility study evaluated 2 treatment scenarios to provide boiler water and cooling water to Marathon refinery. The difference between 2 treatment scenarios was the first treatment scenario was to treat the second on joint water plant using microfiltration, reverse osmosis, nitrification suction processes. The second treatment scenario, next slide, please. The second treatment scenario was to treat the primary effluent from joint water plant using some MBR and reverse osmosis treatment process. Both treatment scenarios would need to include second pass reverse osmosis to reduce the total dissolved solid content to meet the requirement for the boiler feed water. Next slide, please. So the cost analysis for both scenarios indicated that the cost associated with treating the primary effluent from joint water plant with MBR would have a higher capital cost and also higher operation maintenance cost. Next slide, please. Then phase 2 feasibility study went ahead to reduce the treatment capacity to treat about only 9 mgd second from joint water plant to provide only cooling water, about 6.88 mgd cooling water to Marathon refinery. That was to treat the second effluent use the microfiltration versus nitrification treatment processes. I want to mention also that in this slide, in phase 1, because cooling water has less restricted requirement on the total dissolved solid concentration, therefore a second pass reverse osmosis would not be required in this scenario. Next slide, please. So the cost associated with this 9 mgd recycled water treatment plant, including the pipeline construction as well, the cost went down significantly. If you're looking at the column 4 first table, in today's dollar amount, it was about 114 million US dollars. So averagely for this 9 mgd treatment water facility, we're talking about to treat 1 mgd wastewater. Averagely, it costs about $12.6 million in today's dollar amount. Next slide, please. So quick comparison of the water quality of joint water plant and Hyperion second effluent. We mentioned earlier that the joint water plant effluent has higher total dissolved solid concentration, which is here is indicated by the conductivity. The level is higher, about 62% higher for the joint water plant second effluent. Ammonia concentration was estimated to be higher as well for the joint water plant back then. Right before this presentation, I got some data from Hyperion and joint water plant. A quick comparison looks like Hyperion second effluent, the ammonia concentration for Hyperion has increased over the years. So it ranged about 45 to 50 million grams per liter, so very close to the ammonia concentration of joint water plants second effluent. Next slide. To summarize my presentation today, we learned from the past study that not all conclusions from the past study can be used directly on future project implementation. We learned that total dissolved solid concentration of the joint water plant second effluent and primary effluent is higher. However, cost associated with more treatment could possibly be reduced, offset by the reduced amount of pipeline construction, comparing with spring from Hyperion, all the way from Hyperion to the south portion of West Basin service area. At the end, to use the joint water plant effluent as potential water supply for West Basin's recycled water system, that need to be investigated further detail in the future. So this concludes my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you. President Williams, you have some questions or comments?
I have some comments, but I'll have to make them offline to you.
Oh, okay. Any other comments from any or questions from the other board members? Okay, I have some questions because I like to get a better handle on it. So when they looked at of the potential use of water from the LA County Sanitation District's regional plant, at the end there was several alternatives, and I'm not quite sure I followed everything. And I think there's a lot of information to digest here, and we need some time to think about it. But at the end of the day, why was the pursuit of this alternative dropped? Was that because the user was changing operations? Because we've mentioned that the refinery was changing ownership at that time. Is that why this was dropped, or what was the reason that we stopped pursuing this potential option?
Yeah, correct. So the idea was initially was hoping to have, at that time the owner BP to eventually pay the cost, but because around that time BP had the spill, and then it sold the refinery to sold it out, and then because the transfer owner, it has been hard to make agreement on the pricing, project pricing, and to fund the project.
Okay, so it was because of a change in ownership at the refinery. Is that the reason?
Yeah, that's what I understood. Correct.
Okay, and then in terms of the final treatment, you discussed a couple of options, and you talked about the nitrification, the need to, and then whatnot. If we went with TMBR and MFRO, is there still a need for denitrification?
So there's two types of water needed at the Marathon Refinery. One is the boiler feed water. Boiler feed water has a higher requirement on the total dissolved solid. That can only be treated by reverse osmosis. And then the cooling water has less requirement on the total dissolved solid concentration, but have more requirement on the ammonia. So the cooling water need to be nitrified to reduce the ammonia concentration.
And if I may, Chairman Alvarez, good afternoon, directors. Yes, I think the alternatives that they looked at the time, particularly the MBR option, one of them was the MBR option, going from a primary to an MBR to an RO, specifically was to remove to denitrify, if you will. Today, with the demonstration facility that Metropolitan is doing, they're doing that as well. So we did the pilot testing around 2000. Fast forward 10 years after that, the actual, we did the study, we didn't actually go through the pilot test, but 10 years after, Metropolitan and the county sanitation jointly did the effort of pilot testing for today's regional recycled water program. That was around between 2010 2012, which then after the pilot testing, they designed the demonstration facility, and then they built the demonstration facility, and now they're testing to come up with the criteria with demonstration testing. They are considering the main component, one of the main components in that is to denitrify. So I think it will be an essential element to meet the demands of the area, whether it's the refinery or an IPR or a DPR demand.
So thank you very much. Is that kind of where I was leading, is that I think that other people are kind of replicating some of this work, although it'll be updated and so on, and there's some additional information, and some of the water quality in the wastewater stream has changed. So the pilot studies will be updating all of that accordingly. But a lot of this, at least conceptually, is stuff that we've spent quite a bit of time and effort investigating. And even if there was a partial stream that was diverted from the regional plant in Carson, that would be, the treatment is pretty standardized, and it would address not only the needs of the refinery, but will help address some of the other needs that we have to, depending on the sizing.
Yeah.
So
it depends on the magnitude of the demand and what type of demands we need. Like Iris said, is it a boiler feed demand still like we envisioned 20 years ago? Is it a cooling tower demand like we envisioned, or is it a general IPR, potentially DPR type of demand? What the county and Met is looking at right now, the processes are MBR, RO, UV, AOP combined to do that. They are looking at alternative options as well. Our understanding is for the denitrification instead of MBR. But that's the pilot, the demonstration facility that's going on right now.
okay. And if I understood correctly, one of the options that was considered when we did the pilot testing and the investigations 10 years ago was the TMBR MFRO, and that would effectively deal with the nitrification issue.
Correct. The TMBR, in that case, when we looked at it at the Carson, notice the T as tertiary MBR versus what they're looking at right now is secondary MBR, replacing the secondary with an MBR. The TPM MBR that we looked at was, picking up the Title 22 from our system, running it through MBR to denitrify, and sending it towards the cooling towers. And that also did not proceed because of funding from the refinery did not come through.
Okay. As we investigate other options that we may want to be pursuing and looking at the future, it might be worthwhile to revisit this particular item because this gives us another option for redundancy, if you will, to meet some of our demands, especially if we're going to try to increase the groundwater usage in this region in order to become more water independent. It would be very beneficial. So unless there's any other questions or comments, I'd like to thank you all for this presentation and revisiting all of this information, because I think the West Basin did spend quite a bit of time and effort in it. And I think we might want to start re-looking at some of these options and keeping them viable as we try to look forward to how we're going to be becoming more water independent in this region. So we'll probably revisit this again, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item, I'm going to switch the information calendar, and I'm going to move to the last item and have that done first, the capital improvement program update. And then after we finish that, we'll go and do the operations update. So if we could do the capital improvement program update next, please.
Happy to do so, Chairman Alvarez. The item that's before you now, as requested, is item 60. It is our capital improvement program update. Before I hand it off, I did want to point out and again give credit to our engineering team, but also on a comprehensive level, also our finance team as well as our administrative team. The committee, the Engineering Operations Committee, has given staff very specific feedback on this report and specifically the information that you're seeking. In some cases, the information has been readily available and we've been able to get everything and organized. In other cases, we have found that the information that's being sought by the committee is a little bit more difficult. We're tracking back to find out exactly when projects have been approved. A lot of times, and this has been pointed out, CIP projects are approved through the budget process, and then in those cases, it takes multiple years to approve those budgets. And so we are pulling that comprehensive information together. I'm very pleased with the effort of staff, not just in the fact that they've been able to do this fairly quickly, but also through the holiday season, and of course, with COVID, we've been pulling this together, and I just want to stress to the committee that I'm dedicated and our staff is dedicated to bringing forth the information that you have, and you're going to see that information as it transitions, but it's going to take us a little bit of time to get that and organize it properly. So the information that you have today is our first attempt. I expect to get some feedback from the committee, and I will work night and day with our team to make sure that we pull it together and get it done as soon as possible. But I do want to say thank you to our staff because they've done an excellent job. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Wendell Johnson, our manager of engineering, to run through this report for you.
Okay. Before you go on, Mr. Chair, I just want to say that my comments are not criticism of what you're doing, but for you to look at this as going forward, the future, as you present your reports, that you present to Mr. Chairman, which I have been asking for many years, and it's not that, very, very minor things. We do have to go back and reconstruct it. That's so good. I'm not asking that you do it like right away. I mean, as you go, and each year your project, when you presenting your projects, will become better and better.
And thank you for those comments, and I assure you, we don't take it as criticism. Again, we're all dedicated in presenting the best information and the most up-to-date information. And again, you'll see this transition, it's coming together. And so I think you'll see some improvements in this presentation, and then of course, it'll progress and get better each month. So again, with that, I'll hand it off to our manager of engineering, Wendell Johnson.
Thank you, EJ, for the introduction, and thank you for the discussion involved in the CIP update. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. Could we go to the next slide, please? And in the CIP package, there's been several changes in the CIP package.
That 155.
I'm sorry for that. There's been several changes in the CIP package. We're looking on page 155. Okay. Okay, and one is that the map used to be an attachment. Okay, and the map is now part of the presentation. And it lists the majority of the projects, but we also have some projects that we haven't worked on in a long time. And so we're carefully looking at those projects and to determine if they are projects that we plan on moving forward with, or if they're projects that need to be written off or they need to be stopped. Okay. Similar, there's been some projects that have taken a long time to come to fruition. Simply when we talk about North Gardena and Mills Park, we're still working with the Army Corps to make the project more viable. And so we're going to be probably not reporting on those projects or putting them in a separate area of this report so that we have a clear understanding that there's third-party interests involved in this, and the third party is possibly part of the delay in making the project move forward. Could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, and first I'm going to address some of the construction phase projects, and these are the projects that are under the construction phase. Next slide, please. What the improvement you have here is that there's a CIP number. In this case, it's 170. Okay, the description as requested by the board, and we take a look at the project budget. The first time that it was the time that it was approved, what fiscal year it was approved for, and what the total value of the project over the 5-year CIP. As you are aware that sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get projects up and running. Certainly we have an investigation phase, we have a design phase, and so generally most of the projects that we do here at the district are multi-year type projects. And so we want to be able to clearly express to the board what has been committed over the 5-year period for this type of work that's being done. 2 areas that we are mining data for is the expenditure to date and the remaining budget. Okay, although this project is in the construction phase, and we're showing that yes, the project has been approved for $2 million. There has been some expenditures in the area of the design for the project, or site investigation, or project study reports, and labor from the district. And so we're working with finance to come up with those dollar amounts so that we can truly report what the project is going to cost the district to execute. Okay. Next slide, please. Here's a project of interest, is the decommissioning of the Brewery desalter. Okay, and again, this project, we don't really have an approval date on the project. Okay, we don't have a budget for the project, and once we get an estimate of what the project's going to cost, we'll be returning to the board so that we can provide, approval for the decommissioning, as well as come up with a budget and track the expenditures to date on the project. Next slide, please. And in addition to that, what we would also like to show on these CIP update would be the funding source, okay, and the type of funds that are being utilized for the project itself. And so that's some additional information that the department is working on and is gathering or working with finance so that we can also provide the board with that information on these updates on a monthly basis. Next slide, please.
Excuse me. Question. do we have a definition of CIP? So how do we know a CIP project from a regular project? What's the difference?
CIP definition, I mean, it stands for capital improvement
I know
program.
what it stands for, but
Right.
what do we have in our
Sure.
administrative code or whatever? What defines a CIP project?
I have to look back at the administrative code if there's a definition in there particularly for CIP, but I can tell you that we do have projects, for example, the technical planning program that we have, and technical planning project differs from the CIP project by the way that it's funded. The CIP projects, you're building assets, the assets that are depreciated, and so they get put into the CIP category versus sometimes we do projects where we're just doing planning type of studies, and they're considered different type of project, non-CIP type of projects that are funded a little bit differently as well. But we can take a look at if we have a specific definition in administrative code and report back
Or
to.
even in our financial package?
Currently, in addition to that, there's maintenance projects that are ongoing at the facility. And generally, engineering gets involved when the project itself is above the 35,000 threshold. And generally, we're looking at more than one system when we're talking about, we're not talking about a straight replacement of a motor, which is generally less than $35,000, other than the fact that we do have some high-end motors that cost substantially more. But it's also generally we're evaluating the system and we're evaluating the process when we're evaluating the treatment process that's involved in that. And generally we're looking at more redundancy. Like for instance, if we back up one slide and we go to the if we go to the filters, for example, this project is essential for the Title 22 process of water, and these filters serve all waters except for the reverse osmosis and the microfiltration water. But generally, half the water that comes into Edward C. Little goes through the Title 22 train. Okay, and then as it exits, it also goes to some of the satellite projects. In this case, there's a redundancy. There's 14 different filter beds, okay, and they're all in different type of condition, and it's not a simple just go in there and change the media, but we also need to address the accessories that allow the system to work together. Okay, and so when we're talking about the backflow operation, we're talking about the cleaning of the filters, and these are in multi-filters, and certainly once we rehabilitate these filters, they will be good for another 15 to 20 years. And generally, the CIP projects have a very long lifespan for them. Next slide, please.
So Wendell, if I may, the district does have also criteria, just to expand on the question that you had, the district has criteria on what's considered a capitalizable asset. And I think it's something in nature, if it's more than $10,000, it gives a useful life of 3 years or more. There's a specific criteria on what's a capitalizable asset. And so therefore, we replace certain assets like Wendell mentioned as part of maintenance, sometimes in kind, a motor, a valve, or so, and they could be a capitalized asset, but that's basically done through a maintenance effort. If we are rehabbing and the replacement and the rehab effort involves multiple assets, and these replacements and rehab work and refurbishment work is now more being conducted as part of a project, well, therefore that moves into the capital improvement program as a capital project for us to make it. So we construct a facility or an asset, or we replace one that adds value to the district, and it's an asset that is capitalizable and depreciable over a period of time.
Well, that's not quite what I had in mind about defining a capital project, capital improvement project. So this is going to take a little bit. So we'll talk about this offline.
Okay. Keep going. Okay. Next slide, please. Okay, so basically we've provided an update of all the projects that the department are currently working on, that are in the construction phase in this first segment. So if there's any questions about any particular project, I'm prepared to answer those questions without having to go through each and every one of the slides that are being provided here.
Just go ahead. I think we'll have some comments for you at the end.
Okay.
President
Next slide, please.
Comments already.
This is the Torrance Refinery retaining wall and backflow prevention replacement. The project has a failed backwater flow device, which provides fresh water, potable water from the city's water line as makeup water for the nitrification tank. And this project is in the bid phase. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. We just went over the DLD building renovation project. Next slide. Okay. With the cell, this is under design, and currently the project, we are analyzing alternatives to the solid handling system that's existing out there, and an alternative to the earlier, which was proposed, a centrifuge type system. We're looking into possibly a direct connection with either the county or the Los Angeles sanitation district for treating the solids. Next slide, please. The Palos Verdes recycled water lateral project. This is a project that's been in the district's portfolio for quite some time. There's quite a bit of delay in getting agreements with the city of Torrance, but the project is really winding down, and we have an expectation that we'll be bidding part of this project in April. Currently, we are selecting the construction management firm that will manage the construction. Next slide, please. As you're aware, the district operates quite a few chemical storage tanks. This is a district-wide assessment of the condition of the bulk storage tanks that are at various facilities. Most recently, we completed the replacement of 4 sodium hypochlorite tanks at EC Little, and we are looking at the other tanks at the various sites within the district. Next slide, please. The barrier pump station and basin rehabilitation. Under the design phase, we've had a PDR that has taken a look at the assets that are out there, and it has done a condition assessment. Currently, we are developing a phase approach to addressing these assets that need to be rehabilitated. Next slide, please. Again, the district operates quite a few variable frequency drives. These drives are motor control units that vary the speed of the motors that they operate. So we can vary the speed of the pumps and vary the speed at which we pump, or how much we're pumping. Most of these variable speed drives have been in service since the plant was built, and we are taking a look at all of them, all the speed, variable speed drives, and coming up with a systematic way of replacing them. Additionally, we're going to be replacing 3 of the variable frequency drives in the first program, and then we've come up with a standard that we will apply to the rest of the variable frequency drives that the district operates. Next slide, please. Okay, this was this project was brought to the board several months ago. This was an emergency replacement, an urgent, not an emergency, but an urgent replacement of a day tank that was leaking, and the board provided us with authorization to expedite the replacement and installation of this tank. Next slide, please. The DCS project has been underway for quite some time. The audit has been completed on the DCS replacement. We are in the process of determining phases of replacement. I believe the first phase that we'll be looking at will be communications between ECL and the satellite plants. Then we will be looking at facility upgrades for the server rooms and the controller rooms for the system, and we will be presenting this as part of the budget process in March as we put together the long-range CIP program for the next 5 years. Next slide, please. We have, as you're aware, the district operates several, quite a few tanks. In this program, there are 7 storage tanks that we'll be taking a look at. We're taking a look at the Torrance nitrification product tank, along with the Chevron nitrification product tank, as a one project, which will repair or do preventive maintenance on this tank so that we can get a longer life out of the project. Next slide, please. And that's the Chevron. Next slide. As a part of the Chevron agreement, phase 2 and phase 3 have been in operation for a very long time, and they are no longer in operation. And as part of the program agreement with Chevron, we are to replace the phase 2 and the phase 3 microfiltration. More than likely, this project will be replacing these systems with a customized, custom engineered microfiltration system, similar to what we're constructing out at JMM Carson. Next slide, please. We're taking a look at the RO pretreatment. We've been having issues with the effluent, and this pretreatment process is being taken a look at this time. We're producing a preliminary design report, and which will give us direction on which way we will be going with this project for the pretreatment of the RO at ECL. Next slide, please. Any questions? I kind of ran through that pretty quick.
You sure did.
You did, and thank you for that, because it's
That's
already
good,
getting
thank you.
pretty late, and I know that President Williams had to leave today at 5:30, but we'll try to wrap this up in a little bit. First, do you have any comments, President Williams, or questions?
Just thank you.
Any comments or questions from the other board members? Okay. I think that President Williams earlier on pointed out some issues in trying to define some of these projects and how do we get a handle on them. And that's really what we're trying to do, especially as we move forward. But we have a lot of projects underway, and it would be good to be able to categorize them all. One of the things that I'd appreciate, I mean, a project to me goes from conceptual phase through the design phase or feasibility phase, design phase, bidding and construction, and then gets turned over into an asset for operation. So I look at a CIP as from the beginning to the end. You've broken it up here as projects that are under construction, projects that are under design, and so on. Still the same project. So what I would appreciate trying to get a handle on, and if you guys can come back, is the CIP. Here's when it started. Here's how much was budgeted for it at the very beginning, and hopefully that included a budget from design through construction. And then as it moves forward, you'd be reporting it's in the design phase, we completed design, it's in the bidding phase, we completed bidding, and it is in the construction phase, etc. So for example, one of the projects that I think we could probably do some more work on that was presented here is the Palos Verdes Recycled Water Lateral project. Now that says that was approved in May 24th, 2021, but the design of that project predated that because I think that this summer we actually approved an increase or an additional expenditure in the design contract, and that there's been a lot of ongoing work on that project. So that project didn't get approved in May of 2021. Let's go back and try to really say, no, this project, and it may have never been approved. I don't know how it evolved. We weren't here. There's a lot of change in staff, etc. So, but let's just say the project's been around for a long time. There's been a lot of expenditure, time, and effort on it. Let's try to capture that. And as we move forward, when we really get a handle on things, and we can just track them that way. No, this was approved at time X, etc. So another example along those lines would be the emergency project that was referred to, which is the replacement of the sodium hypochlorite tank. That actually had an approval date. You came to the board. It was not a project that was at all anticipated as being needed or anything else, but it was an emergency project that came up. So there was a date when the board did take an action. So in the approval date, we can go back and say that was done by a board action, whether it was by resolution or by minute action or whatever, that was approved on that date. There was a budget that was approved at that time. And then there was a funding source that was designated. And I believe in that project, we were going to take it out of the reserves. But I made one or two of the projects we approved at that time was going to come out of reserves funds. So we had a budget for it. The money was there. So when you look at a CIP schedule, you should be able to identify all of these things in one quick reference document. And so we would have a complete list. I'm assuming that everything you presented here, those are all the CIPs that we got that we know of. And then we have some programmatic activities that are going on. And sometimes we think of programmatic activities as CIP, and there is kind of a crossover that bleeds across there. And I think that was some of the comments that President Williams was referring to earlier. How do we define CIP basis for versus programmatic activities that are also requiring a lot of engineering time and a lot of studies and so on. And we want to track those too, but we want to know what we have. So as we go through and really, and there's a lot of TBDs in the presentation that you made today. I understand that you're researching it and so on, but that's what we're looking for. We're really, when would the project, when did it first get approved? Because as we talked about on the Palos Verdes Lateral, that didn't get approved in May. There may have been some additional approvals in May, but we know that that's been going on, and we know that we added to the design phase So that design has been going on for a couple of years now, and a lot of money has already been spent. So what was the total budget? And then one of the things, Wendell, that you mentioned, which is very appropriate, is what are the funding sources? How are we going to fund the project? When it gets approved, we get, we're going to go ahead and fund it from the general funds that we have. We're going to fund it from grant funding. We're going to fund it because of partnerships that we have partners that are contributing to it. So all of the monies that come together for that. And then as we move forward with the project, maybe we started a project and the total funding for that project may have been $10 million. But now we're at a point where we're at $15 million. How did we go from the 10 to the 15, and what are the funding sources that are going to make that up? And, I'm the newest member of the board, and I have a very difficult time when I look at our budget and, trying to define all their CIPs. CIPs in most agencies are defined in the budget, and they're listed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Here's the budget for it. Our budget doesn't show that. Our budget just shows a pot of money for CIP, but it doesn't identify what they are. And we'd like to know, what they are. And I think for managing the projects, it'll make it easier for all of you to be able to track all of that and make sure that we're staying on budget, or if not, how we're going to address those issues. Okay, so those are my comments. And with that, I think we're going to skip the monthly operations update and go ahead and conclude the meeting at this time.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman
Okay.
Alvarez. And I specifically want to say thank you for your feedback. I want to say thank you for staff, all the work that we've done, but we know that we have a lot of work to be done. And so we're dedicated to doing that. And so you'll see that progression, but thank you very much for your specific feedback.
Okay. All right, so just in closing right now, there's no closed session. Any general director comments or future agenda items? Director Deere?
I do. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, it's Don Deere. You were talking about the Central Basin having a part of this lot in their district. I think we have to either agendize for a board meeting or a proper committee meeting, the going back to the original boundary lines. And we should do it soon, because if we sell this property, it may be private property and therefore taxable. So we need to put this whole lot back into West Basin. And I'll see it agendized. I don't know whether it should go to a committee or to the full board. What do you think?
Yeah, we'll let staff look at that and decide what would be the best approach to do that. I think if you sell it, it doesn't matter where it is. It's in Los Angeles County. So from a tax point of view, the parcel tax is a parcel within LA County, but we can bring that back to the board.
Yes, that is a discussion that I'm happy to have with the board. It is important to note that several months ago, the Central Basin Municipal Water District did contact us to discuss whether we were interested in receiving the property back and moving the boundary lines. What I suggested to them at that time was that if their board had agreed that they were willing to move forward with that, that they should contact us via letter stating that fact. And I have not yet received that letter, although I have had conversations with their general manager. So I can reach back out to them, but I'll discuss this with the board president and get some next steps.
Okay.
Any other comment, Director Deere?
No. Thank you very much. No.
All right, Director Gray, do you have any comments?
No, thank you very much. Thanks to staff for their reports today. Thank you.
Okay, Director Houston?
Real quick, I just want to say thank you to everybody today, because these were some really good discussions, and I also know we skipped some things, and so I think perhaps at the board meeting, Mr. General Manager, I'd be interested potentially in hearing the water facility monthly operations update, just because we have so many projects going on right now. And it's one thing if I looked at it myself or called you and asked questions, but I think it'd be better that publicly we could get an update on this. And one thing I would note, in a lot of these different projects that are happening right now throughout the district. And this is also maybe for PI meeting as well, but as they start coming together or finalizing, let's look at opportunities to, of course, promote the publicity of these coming to a conclusion. Because again, there's a number of projects here that are, it looks like some of them are coming closer to the end, and they'd be primed to put out there. Right now, we're doing a lot of conservation updates, but I think it'd be great to showcase some of the infrastructure work we've been completing. So those would be my comments. And again, I want to say thank you to everybody, because this has been a very productive and interesting dialogue today. I think we made some good decisions, and looking forward to our board meeting end of month. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, we are adjourned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and of course, committee members and board members, and thank you very much to staff.